Hello and welcome to Horseplayer Happy Hour. We have reached the semi-final round of this Horseplayer Happy Hour tour. We also have our qualifier running alongside this. We're going to be giving you updates on that contest as well, doing some Breeders' Cup previewing along the way. Got two great guests with me. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal, back with you in the Brooklyn bunker once again. And we'll start with the man who's been here most weeks this season. He's coming to us from the planet Texas in his various peregrinations around the globe. He is Jonathan Kitchen. JK, what's up?
Am I muted? Okay, I thought I was muted. I want a definition of what that word you just used was.
Just like wanderings, travelings, things like that. But it's sort of a fancy way to say it. I thought you might like.
What'd you call it? A peregrination?
Peregrinations. It's a real word. Look it up. You won't find that.
I believe you. I believe you.
But things are good now. You are on mute, by the way. I don't know if you did that on purpose.
Well, no, I'm the master of the mute button. I switch on and off, and I screw it up every now and then. But it makes sense. There you go. Good to have JK with us. Also joined by a special guest who has not been with us in a minute. And he's a guy who you probably already know, but if you don't, you need to be paying attention to his work. He does a phenomenal job. He's going to be a very big part of Daily Racing Form's Breeders' Cup coverage, which we're going to ask him about straight away. Also one of the most respected handicappers, morning line makers in the business. He's David Aragona. David, what's up, buddy?
Not too much. Happy to join you guys and chat some Breeders' Cup.
Excellent. Well, speaking of Breeders' Cup, tell us what you and Brad Free and others are doing over there for our friends that we affectionately call the place with the letters as far as their Breeders' Cup coverage is going.
Yes, we've got a ton of Breeders' Cup coverage going on. You can go to the Breeders' Cup hub in the subhead on DRF.com and just check out the pages for every race. We've got articles from obviously all the DRF reporters, also compiling top 10 lists. Brad Free and I are doing early odds for all 14 of the Breeders' Cup races. Brad's doing the Saturday races. I'm focusing on the juvenile races on Friday. So a lot going on over at DRF.com.
We're going to focus on those Friday juvenile races a little bit earlier, David, but we sort of were kicking the tires on some things we might want to talk about today. And one race that came up in particular was the Breeders' Cup Distaff as one that you feel like might be an interesting place to wager. JK, I know you've got some thoughts on the Distaff as well. Maybe we'll kick off the show talking about that one. Simply put, what are your thoughts on this race, David? Is one of the ones you're looking forward to potentially wagering on?
It just feels like so much has changed in the past several months as some horses that were considered to be the top of the division have put forth some disappointing efforts, namely Nest and Clairiere. And it just feels like there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot left to be settled in this division, both with the older fillies and mares as well as the 3-year-old fillies. It feels like this race will decide those championships. And, a lot of the top contenders just all are coming in with similar running styles. I mean, just going down the list, Idiomatic, Adair Manor, Randomized, and I suppose you could even throw in Search Results, who has tactical speed. A lot of horses that want to be forwardly placed in this race, and a lot of horses that have been enjoying some favorable pace setups in their prep wins. So it just feels like an interesting race to handicap, just given the pace and how much uncertainty there is around a lot of the contenders coming in to face the toughest test that they have in their last few starts.
JK, I know pace analysis is something that's huge for you when it comes to looking at races. Not usually so for races that are still several weeks out and we haven't seen PPs, but I tend to agree with David. this is the rare race that I feel like I want to take a pace angle, even though we don't know who exactly is running yet. Is that the way you see it? Or do you sort of have your head around this a little bit more than an average race from several weeks out for that reason?
Well, I just think like on an average Saturday, I think connections try to get a little cuter on an average Saturday with a race like this. Maybe they try to experiment a little bit. Oh, let's just see if Idiomatic will rate. Like, that's not a converse. You don't do that on Breeders' Cup Day, right? You kind of dance with who brought you and her speed and getting loose on the front end. Brad Cox and Florent Giroux, they've never rated a good horse. It's not. So you feel a little bit more comfortable, in my opinion, in a big stage like this with big horses and big moments and a lot on the line, that you kind of have a better prediction of what they're going to do because you know what they're best at. Right, randomized. Her big wins are wire to wire or forward. A Dare Manor. When was the last time Baffert rated a horse outside of the Travers this year, which when National Treasure didn't find the front end? But it's one of those situations where I feel comfortable in saying that the pace should be fast. Now, like I said, if it was a Saturday at Saratoga, there'd be a significantly lesser confidence in that happening because we see it all the time. I just think the pace is going to be quick. And I think trying to get cute and suggest that the pace is not going to be fast is asking for trouble.
For me, the horse that leaps out with all these things in mind, and we talked about this a little bit last week on these airwaves with Brad Free, who we were just talking about before, but it feels like Clairiere might be the one who has the race most run to suit. David, is that how you see it, or are you looking for maybe more even of a boil over, something similar to what we saw at the Breeders' Cup a couple of years ago with a very big priced closer coming to pick up the pieces late?
Yeah, so I'll just put out there, I'm not somebody who likes to formulate handicapping opinions way ahead of time. I want to see the field, the post position draw, all of that. But it does feel like Clairiere is going to get the right kind of setup, but she still has big questions to answer because, she was arguably a little bit dull when she lost to Nest in that Chuvy, especially considering what Nest has done since then. And then the Personal Ensign was just a disaster. Maybe she didn't like the sloppy track. It certainly seemed that way. And it was a speed favoring course as well at Saratoga. But it's another year where she kind of has to prove that she can bounce back from a poor effort in the Breeders' Cup. And it's the kind of situation where I'd want to just see what the price is. If she's 7-2, I don't know if I'd want to take that short a price if she kind of becomes the consensus clever pick in the race. But if she's 6-1, that's probably a good price on a horse like Clairiere, given how this race is supposed to set up.
Currently in the international betting, a very big price at 12-1, but I agree, could become everybody's sort of wise guy horse, and that would change things around. How about you, JK? Are there any closers you have your eye on, and did you see any particular excuses for Clairiere last time out?
No, I just think she's one of those horses where, she's good and she's really good, but she's not at that level where she is one of those horses you can count on to overcome a bunch of adversity. I think when things kind of fall in her lap, she's really hard to beat. And so I'm thinking that it might fall in her lap. We'll see. I'm with David on how horses are working, where they're drawing, who else shows up. Do they all run? Are they not running? What, are they? Do you hear somewhere that they're going to try to rate Idiomatic? There's a lot of information that could come out between now and then. But I think that Clairiere is definitely interesting. I also think that a horse like Search Results is interesting. We've kind of forgotten about her. If you like Clairiere, you like Malathot. Search Results was in that category with those horses when they were 3-year-olds. She's had a lot of obstacles and she hasn't really kind of given us the consistency that we want from her. But damn, she's been right. She was right there with him. And I honestly, I think she ran the best race in the Phipps back when Malathot and Clairiere were running her down. It just Irad moved way too early. And I think she ran the best race that day. So I think she's a little bit interesting too. It just depends on what kind of how she's ridden. But with randomized in there as well, you'd like to think that she'd kind of take back a little bit.
You'd think stalk and pounce would be the tactics. David, fully understand about not holding anybody's feet to the fire for a pick on this show or anything like that. And obviously your selections will be visible in all the DRF coverage and the DRF special edition that will be coming out. People can check back in with that later. But is there anybody else you'd want to name check as maybe just an interesting horse that's on your radar heading into this year's distaff?
Yeah, it's just the kind of race where I really want to keep an open mind because it feels like there's that potential for chaos. I mean, we saw something similar in that last Breeders' Cup Distaff at Santa Anita, won by Marshall Lorraine, where there was a total pace collapse and a horse that got the right trip and was ready to fire on the day, was able to win at a big price. So I want to see how this field comes up. I want to see if there are some horses that are not really on our radars yet that might be entered. A horse that I'm kind of interested to see if her connections do decide to run is Kijera, who, if you saw her last race at Churchill Downs when they finally put her back on the dirt, was super impressive. I know she was only beating some of the B-level 3-year-olds out there, but I mean, she won that race really convincingly. So I'd be interested to see if a horse like her runs. There's a horse coming in from Argentina who I have to do some work on still. So it's the kind of race where I want to see who shows up in the starting gate because it feels like this one could be open to a potentially bigger price.
Good stuff, David. And for those looking up Kijera, that's XI if you want to Google for the first two letters. Great stuff on the distaff. All right, boys, let's turn our attention to the race that's about to happen here at Keeneland. David, I didn't prep you for Keeneland at all, so feel free to sit out completely. But curious, JK, you and I to talk through what we're looking at here, and then very soon we're going to catch up with our contest leaderboard as well. But we do have 1 minute to post there as we switch over to the screen, and we've got a pretty open-looking market with right now a 3-1 the field, 3-1 favorite in the form of the 10 runner, but also the 3 and the 4, 5 and 6 all catching money single digits. Looks very, very competitive on paper. Did you have any strong preference in here, Jonathan? We caught you on mute. We knew we would, and we did.
I told you. I mean, look, it wouldn't be a podcast without me being stuck on mute. Look, I thought the one that kind of caught my attention, especially from a contest standpoint, I thought was interesting, was the 6 Sir London, a horse that had been out west with Simon Callahan and then switches to Graham Motion and now switches surface. I think when you have a horse that has been doing something, shown a little bit of talent, has had a couple of good runs, and then ends up going to another successful trainer and does change up, switch up. I think it's interesting. There's definitely some siblings. I think 3 or 4 siblings that tried the turf have won, and you're taking the blinkers off. You get Tyler Gaffleone, and you're getting a fair enough price at 6-1. So my eyes were to the 6 in here as an opportunity.
Excellent. Let's go to the race. We'll go to the race call on this one. We'll watch this. We'll let that go official, and we'll catch up on our leaderboards and some of the questions. Lots of questions so far. Appreciate that, everybody chiming in. Feel free to ask some more. We'll get to as many as we can. We do have a lot that we have to talk about, so I may save some of the questions for next week and our final table. We're off at Keeneland.
McKillop from the inside. McKillop and Mendel Secret are quick into stride. Mendel Secret comes forward for the lead now. Sir London moves up from between horses, and Lincoln Highway is up close as well in the opening strides. Hardy Choice now moving forward into third as they move into the first turn. Mendel Secret against the rail has the lead. Sir London second on the outside. Hardy Choice 3 wide in third. Lincoln Highway saving ground from fourth, moving up a spot around the first turn. American Diamond up close early on between horses in fifth. Tiverton was a wide sixth around the turn. Redemption Time also toward the outside in seventh. End Point saved ground to the inside in eighth. McKillop is shuffled back into ninth. Clyde's Got a Gun is racing outward from the rail up the backstretch in the 10th position. El Ahijado is against the rail in 11th, and 10 days later moves up one spot from 12th, 22.6. The time for the opening quarter, and Tiverton has the lead. Tiverton leads it now, clear by a length and a half to the far turn. Sir London challenging for second, just outside of Mendel Secret. A first half mile here in 47 seconds flat. Lincoln Highway is against the rail, fourth, running 5 lengths off the lead. Hardy Choice is a wide fifth, and then American Diamond is sixth in between horses. Looks for some more running room, still 6 lengths from the front. Tiverton leads it by 3 lengths off the far turn. Sir London goes second by 4, and then Lincoln Highway. American Diamond is still far back as they move through the stretch. Here's Lincoln Highway to challenge Sir London. Sir London inside. Lincoln Highway, a narrow lead from the outside. Clyde's Got a Gun runs late. McKillop runs late. Third and fourth, trying to chase down Lincoln Highway, but the wire's coming. Lincoln Highway chased by McKillop. Lincoln Highway hangs on by a diminishing neck for Luis Saez in the feature.
Thought you were in good shape there for a long way, JK. But then the race started to come apart a bit late, and Lincoln Highway just had way too much. Vicky Oliver having a nice little Keeneland meet, and Saez doing Saez things, getting that one home in the stretch. Any thoughts on it?
No, I don't mean this in like in a mean way, but like, does Vicky Oliver win races anywhere else? Like, she sets her horses up for Keeneland. I mean, she wants to win at Keeneland. Her connections want to win at Keeneland. So she does an outstanding job. I always upgrade her horses there. You kind of have to. They always run well.
Good stuff. All right, we've got another race at Belmont in about 7 minutes. So what we're going to do is we'll wait for this to go official. And why don't we take a look? No, we'll wait for this to go official, and then we'll look at leaderboards. We'll do a little bit of a reset. We'll let folks know what's going on. We've been doing these contests since early June. We had an entire regular season of theater events for Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge qualifiers. That was an interconnected contest that produced the entries that ended up in what we call our playoffs. We started our playoffs with 80 players. We're now down today to 20 players. At the end of today, we'll have 10 players. They're going to go to our final table. That'll be the official Horseplayer Happy Hour finale next week. Will be those 10 playing for a $10,000 Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seat. We also had an overall winner on the tour from those contests from June, just through a couple of weeks ago, where we gave a $10,000 Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seat to our champion, Jeff Van Dree, who we're excited to catch up with. Next week will be fun. We'll do an expanded show. I'll have a bunch of pre-tapes. I want to get as many of the top 10 as we can on here. We're going to have some more DRF participation as well. David's colleague, Dan Illman, will be on with us. Always wonderful to catch up with Dan as well. So yeah, it's going to be it's going to be a lot of fun these next couple of weeks, and then tons of other info. You can catch our act over at inthemoneypodcast.com. Learn much more about what we have going on, and of course, David can be found his work in the pages of Daily Racing Form and over at drf.com. Yeah, let us know. This is a good chance to answer some one-off type questions. We got a great one here from Jackson, who wanted to know if any of us have an early thought on Zozos for a race like the Dirt Mile, big class test. But he's thinking he might have a chance to get loose in a spot like that. JK, you and I have, at the risk of being struck by lightning for bad karma, been of the mind that maybe Cody's Wish could be vulnerable from a betting point of view, as much as we're rooting for him from a story point of view in this race. David, do you have a quick thought? Are you up on the form of Zozos to give a quick comment to Jackson's question?
It's the sort of situation where you really need to see how the race comes up, because if there's another speed in there, obviously that's not going to be ideal for Zozos. He's a horse that has a lot of talent, but he's only really shown that talent when he really gets things to go his way. That was certainly the case last time when he won. I believe it was the Ack Stakes at Churchill Downs, just setting a very slow pace to beat a weaker field that he's going to meet in the Dirt Mile. I kind of agree with you guys that I think this could be a race where Cody's Wish is finally a little bit vulnerable going the mile distance. But it really is going to depend on how the race shapes up from a pace standpoint.
Yeah, that's right. And again, there are perils in doing this so far out. But Jackson, you may have identified yourself potentially on a live one there. We're going to be following along, all on these podcasts and over at inthemoneypodcast.com as well. Richard says hello. He's been an MVP in these comments over the last several shows, and he specifically says that David, he loves the DRF horses to watch that you're involved in. And that's not all. You also are, funny enough, we're interconnected. We have podcast DNA in common, because the podcast feed that we helped create all those years ago, you're still very active on. Tell folks, because we've got a lot of people who'll be watching and listening, looking for more horse racing podcasts. And I have to recommend yours. Tell people about what you got going on there and where they can find it.
Yeah, we've transformed it a little bit over the years. These days, I do a podcast with Craig Milkowski, who is the Timeform US speed figure maker. We put out 2 a week. We do like a recap show from the weekend races where we go over all of the Timeform US speed figures, top performances of the week. And then we do a handicapping show, usually every Friday, where we take a look at typically a pick 5 sequence somewhere for Saturday. I think we'll be doing Keeneland for this Saturday. So you can check out the Timeform US Pacecast and Forecast on any of the Daily Racing Form channels.
Awesome. Wherever you get your podcast, you'll find that one. We've got lots of international participation today. We've got Ireland watching and listening, Barbados. We're all over the place. I love to see that. We've also got 3 minutes to our next race at the Belmont at the Big A. So I'm going to call an audible, AJ, and I'm going to say we talk about this race. I want to bring in David to get his thoughts on this one, bounce it back and forth with JK. Then if we have time, we'll do the leaderboards. And if not, we'll just do the leaderboards after this race when they update again. But now that we have this leaderboard in front of us, we got a big favorite in the form of the 2-runner, Dance Macabre. What are you thinking about this one, David? You know, I know you have your analysis printed. Has it stayed in lockstep, or have the odds or anything you've seen today at Belmont changed the way you're looking at this one?
I mean, the turf course seems like it's playing pretty fairly. There's a bias on the dirt that doesn't really matter anymore for today's racing. As far as Dance Macabre goes, she's just the horse to beat in this race. I don't really have a knock against her. It's just that this came up a pretty competitive field, and I think there are some interesting horses that are going off at much bigger prices and offering better value than she is, so she could win the race. I think she's arguably the most likely winner of this race. I'm just looking elsewhere. I was most interested in the number 5, Future Is Now, and especially the number 10, Ticker Tape Home, at the price that she is. Future Is Now has just shown a lot of speed in her prior 5 furlong win at Pimlico, and question or not whether she can translate that to the 6 furlongs here, but it feels like she's the quickest of the quick early, and she's going to be in front, and she might have quite a bit of talent for Mike Trombetta, who I believe has won this race before. And Ticker Tape Home on the outside, she's one of 2 Marcassi runners in this race, and just a horse that you could make the case deserves to get another chance sprinting on the turf, because she ran some fast numbers as a 2-year-old going 6 and 7 furlongs on the turf. She got an impossible wide trip when she tried the turf one time this year in the Florida Oaks earlier in the year, and now she's finally getting back into a turf sprint, and I think she's pretty interesting at what I think currently is a pretty big price.
Absolutely. 2 good shouts on double-digit long shots there from David. JK, how do you see this year's running of the Glen Cove Stakes for these 3-year-old fillies as they start to load at Belmont at the Big A?
Yeah, look, I mean, I agree with the Dance Macabre thing. When a horse can run well going 6.5 and run well going 5.5, it shows me a lot of diversity as a turf sprinter, because I think a lot of these turf sprinters really kind of fall in love with one specific distance, and I thought that horse ran extremely well. And then look, I mean, the 10 Ticker Tape Home with has some fast numbers. Most of them were on synthetic, but we all know that can sometimes apply. I would be cutting in line trying to beat the 2. But I guess if I would go elsewhere, maybe the 9 I thought was a little bit interesting, but probably a little bit overbet considering the chances. I'll officially go with the 2 in here, but it's a wide open feeling race.
Yeah, I don't hate the idea of messing around with the 4 horses you guys mentioned in various forms of exotics, maybe keying the ones at bigger prices. So if we can get either the 5 or the 10 in the top 2 here, maybe a chance to cash a little ticket during this Horseplayer Happy Hour. Let us know what you bet. I do not think we're going to have time for a leaderboard look before this race, AJ. So we will wait a minute because it looks like there's some small delay in loading. So we'll chat for another moment, and then we'll send it over to Belmont at the Big A and the call. Not sure what the delay is, but we definitely have some horses standing around. So I don't want to throw it too soon, but it looks like we're going forward and getting ready for the start. So yeah, we will go ahead and throw this one back to the caller and see what happens here in the 8th race at Belmont at the Big A.
And they're off, and it was a slow start for number 1, Zoe Innocent. There goes Future Is Now out for the early lead with Determined Jester racing in second. Don't Look Back at All on the outside. And then Beauty of the Sea towards the rail running in 4th. Love Appeals is next in 5th. Dance Macabre is 6th at this point. In between horses, Lady Beth in 7th. Ticker Tape Home on the outside in 8th. At the back, Our Personal Pursuit and the slow starting Zoe Innocent. Opening quarter mile in 22 and 1/5 seconds. It's Determined Jester. And on the outside, Future Is Now. And the 2 of them are right together. They've opened up 5.5 lengths on Don't Look Back at All in 3rd. Then Love Appeals racing in 4th. Ticker Tape Home on the outside in 5th. Followed by Beauty of the Sea and Dance Macabre, the half in 44 and 4/5 seconds as they come through the stretch. Don't Look Back at All is ranging up on the outside now to take over the lead. Love Appeals moving into second. Dance Macabre is putting in a furious late run. Darts down to the inside. Don't Look Back at All. Here's Dance Macabre. Then Dance Macabre takes over from off the pace. She wins the Glen Cove Stakes impressively in 1 minute 9 and 1/5 seconds.
JK cashes the chalk exacta there. But David, I think you got to be happy with the run for your money you got from Future Is Now, who gave it a bold bid and let me dream on a 5-10 exacta there for a minute.
Yeah, I just went a little too quickly on the front end. That 3-horse, the long shot determined Jester, really went unexpectedly fast inside of her, and it just set it up for Dance Macabre, who showed up with her typical good effort. She's reliable.
I thought it was interesting. You don't often see the kind of a backflash in odds we saw on Don't Look Back at All, who I looked up and was 4 and ended up going off at 7. Usually they don't run so well. This one did, JK, and just holds on to get me my money back anyway in the chalk exacta.
Yeah, well, what did it come? Did the 9 run second?
Yeah, the 9 was second.
Oh, you keep saying the chalk exactly. The 9 was 7-1.
That's right, because you were 4-1 before. That's why I was thinking. That's why I wanted to make fun of you. But you're right.
Look, trust me, I'll give you plenty of reasons to make fun of me about chalk exactas, but that wasn't one of them. So I got to stand up for myself in that situation.
No, you're right. You're right. Host fail. I'll accept the host fail on that one. No, and I followed you in, so I'm not knocking you. I just was I was surprised to see that. Maybe I looked at the wrong thing, because in the New York win pool especially, you don't see big moves like that. But I swear this one, I'll have to go back and look at the data and see if I'm making things up or if that's the way it went. All right, when we get this official, we're going to look at some leaderboards, and then we're going to pivot and do a very early look at some of these Friday races, David. Again, no, not looking to do picks or anything, just more overviews and such. And then we'll keep that going for a while. We got JK for about 15 more minutes. We'll let you go and do your daddy duty stuff, and we'll continue on for the hour here. But I'm very curious to, once this goes official, get a little bit of a look at the leaderboards and see, because we're getting very close to having a final table. The plaudits are flowing in for JK, who's 2-9 exacta. Apparently made some of these folks in the comments some money. So good for you. Good for you on that one, Jonathan. All right, this will go official any minute. Let's see what else we have here in the comments. We've got a lot of people wishing some good luck ahead of the Breeders' Cup. We appreciate that. We have this is funny. We have a question about Far Hills. We've got a Seddon fan for the Grand National. I've actually looked a little at these races. We did a special show that I'm actually going to post in the podcast feed with Jessica Paquette and Sean Clancy going over all 7 races at Far Hills tomorrow. I'm debating trying to make it out there. Have either of you ever been to Far Hills to go to the races? JK, I know you're 100-1 for this. David, I feel like you're like a 4-1 shot to have been.
Never made it out there. My only experience with jump racing actually is up in Saratoga, so that's the limit of my experience.
Far Hills
anywhere where my shoes can get dirty or like possibly ruined, it's a long shot for me.
Yeah, and you've got a very good chance to ruin some shoes out there. If I were traveling solo, I'll be traveling with the 10-year-old girl I was high-fiving during the race before, trying to convince her not to interrupt till later in the show. It could be challenging, but it's fun just because so many people are there. And this year, they've got wagering, and they've got, I think there's pari-mutuel, and there's definitely fixed odds, because that's the show I just did. So definitely has the potential to be a lot of fun. Okay, we're official. Let's look at some leaderboards, AJ. Starting off with the qualifier, and so we have some breakage, but right now, Mark Capitan, El Capitan, sitting in a very nice position with 3 races left and 93.24. But just looking, there's enough difference in the numbers that Tony Garofalo and Kevin Kilroy, who often does work for us, and you see on the Fairgrounds simulcast feed in there with a shot. Christopher Olson, very experienced contest player. He's got a couple of different chances to get there. Brian Chenvert, very well-known player as well. You have Patrick McGoey, a former champion in there. Pat Gianforte, lots of familiar names from the contest scene. A former tour champion in Kevin Costello's name there as well. Now we'll go over everybody who's doing the playoff, where we've got our 20 winnowing down to 10. I'll read that for folks as soon as we get that on the screen. And Brian Hofacker in top position right now. Very hard to imagine him not being at our final table. He hasn't answered the last 2 emails I sent him, so I'm not overly hopeful on getting him on the show, but I'm going to try. Kevin Nunez, Michael Cavanna, Tanya Taylor, Silky Wilkie. That'll be an interview potentially for the ages. He told me at Keeneland this weekend, JK, he wants to be the new face of horse racing. I don't know who he thinks the old face of horse racing is, but anyway, I'm pretty sure we can get Silky Wilkie. Maybe we can even make a White Russian on air to drink. Former NHC champion Chris Littlemore, Daniel Edwards, Jonathan Cummings, Alexa Zepp, Stephen McNatt, Julie LeBoyko, who has 2 in the top 20 in achievement in and of itself. ITM's own Michael Domable, Pat Qualifier, Robert Courtney, Julie LeBoyko again, there's the second one, Mark Henderson, Mark Winland, Matt Miller, Howard Johnson, and Daryl Parker. Even those folks far back, you just got to get in the top 10. Cut line right now, 26-10. So still all to play for in terms of who will end up at our final table.
David, have you ever played the BCBC before?
I have not. I'm not really much of a contest player, or at least I haven't been.
I mean, I think it would do your creativity, David, I think would play very well in contest formats. Is it just that you feel like you have enough action as it is, or is it something that's maybe on your radar to check out?
You know, it's just one of those things where, especially when you work in the industry, you're so focused on the stuff that you have to do that kind of reserving space in your mind to think about something that does take a different way of thinking about the race is like a contest. It's not an endeavor that I think I've put enough thought into to really take a serious stab at it, but maybe something for the future.
Bandwidth is a thing,
yes,
for sure. Okay, guys, I promised we were going to do this. Let's do it. Let's take the earliest look, the way too early look at Breeders' Cup Friday, the Future Stars Friday. David, I know this is a category that you follow in particular all year long. You have a lot of acumen in various areas of handicapping and horse playing, but none more so, in my opinion, than when it comes to looking at 2-year-olds. We'll start with a very basic one. Which 2-year-old race are you most looking forward to checking out?
Without a doubt, the Juvenile, because it feels like you've got 4 really talented horses that have won the major prep races, 2 out in California for Bob Baffert, and then 2 that are more East Coast based or in Kentucky, Locked and Timberlake. And I'm just really intrigued to see how these 4 horses stack up against each other, because they're similar on speed figures. You could like each one for different reasons heading into the race. And it's just the matchup among these 4 that I'm most interested in seeing on Friday.
I get it. I mean, right now, how are you leaning towards splitting them? Does one aspect stand out above the others, or is it really just a scrum you're going to separate as we get closer to the day?
I would say I'm probably most skeptical of Prince of Monaco, just skipping the prep, and he's just got a pedigree that leans a little bit more towards sprinting and looks a little bit that way to me. I was surprised by how well Muth ran in the American Pharaoh, not just that he won the race, but he really handled the distance better than I thought he was going to. So, I mean, just given the home court advantage that they have, I think they're going to be tough, but I do like Locked and Timberlake a little bit more. I just feel like we've seen them handle different kinds of adversity. Timberlake in the hopeful, running so well after getting rank early in the race and then handling the sloppy track last time in the Champagne. He feels like one that is going to get better with distance to me. I feel like we know that about Locked already, having handled the 2 turns in the Breeders' Futurity, and that was a legitimate effort after the wide trip that he got. We'll see if the Santa Anita track suits him as well, because sometimes it can be a little speed favoring, and we'll see if Bob Baffert's able to sort of control this race on the front end, since both of his horses do have speed. But I'm leaning a little bit more towards Locked, and especially Timberlake. I really think he's got a lot of talent.
JK, let's bring you back in, because we've talked about this race a lot in different videos and shows already, and we've had some more data come in since the last conversation we had, at least on our YouTube channel. So I'm very curious to know, how are you separating these top contenders right now? Do you still believe this could be a Baffert benefit, or like David, are you thinking maybe the East Coast can get involved?
No, I mean, I think I'm going to probably, I think if they were loading in the gate right now and it was getting close, I would probably use Timberlake and Prince of Monaco. I'm frustrated that Prince of Monaco didn't run in that prep. It's not necessarily like a negative to me, because like it's kind of Baffert's thing, right? I mean, he won the Classic in American Pharoah, training them up to the race. I don't think that that's too much of a concern for me. I mean, but the reason I don't like it is I wanted to find out which race was real for Prince of Monaco from a figure standpoint, 2 back or the last race. And now I have to guess again on Breeders' Cup Friday, which is a little frustrating because I'd rather just know. But Timberlake is kind of who I thought he was. Disappointing that he didn't run better, and the hopeful. He had a trouble trip in there, but then he kind of showed up last time in the Champagne and showed me who he really. He's the best horse field, but those other 3 are pretty damn good. But I think that the way you make money in that race is not by using all 4 of them. It's by narrowing it to 2 or 1 and letting the other 2 or 3 beat you.
We'll have that conversation closer to the time. David, need to bring you in for potentially a reality check here from me, because I basically hurt my finger. I have carpal tunnel from texting different friends in the UK, telling them to bet over and over for me when Tamara was 2-1 in the juvenile fillies. That price is gone. Is this a 1-horse race? I mean, I keep trying to convince myself that it is, but having made those bets, I'm a little bit biased. What do you think of Tamara's chances realistically in the juvenile fillies?
I mean, I guess you could frame it in a way that she has the same questions to answer that Prince of Monaco does, because same thing, they've elected to skip the final prep and just try the 2 turns in the Breeders' Cup. I think you probably justifiably have a little more confidence that Tamara's not going to have a problem with it, given her pedigree and just the way in which she won the Del Mar debutante. Like, added ground was arguably going to be her friend. And also just given the competition out there, I mean, nothing against the horses that ran in the Alcibiades. I thought that was a decent prep race. And Candide is a horse that does have upside still. She's been a little goofy in her races, hanging on her left lead, even when winning that last race. But it feels like they all have to take a step forward to get on Tamara's level. And just given the general lack of depth in this division compared to the 2-year-old males, she probably even has some room for a slight regression and could still win this race. So she's way the horse to beat. But I mean, it's the kind of situation where the assumption that she's going to handle the distance is built into the price, and she hasn't proven it yet. So there could be a potential underlay on her.
Interesting. We'll talk more about Tamara and what price you think she might be. But JK, I know we're on a tight clock with you for this video, and now that David has taken the wind out of my sails, I'm wondering if you might put some back.
Well, here's the problem, right? When it comes to these 2-year-old races, and you see it all the time. You see it with like the kind of the flashy, this fastest horse in the world, first time starter, which I'm sure David loves those horses when he's making his morning line. But what I'll say is that the thing that makes these races so interesting is 2 things can happen. One is that can be true that Tamara is without a doubt the best in her group, and it appears that that's the case. But there's also the other possibility that the other horses who have only run 1, 2, or 3 times could figure it out and turn up and run big, fast races. And that's the problem. That's the question, is which one of those situations is going to happen. I'm leaning towards the fact that Tamara is who we think she is, and that she's going to be extremely tough to beat. And she's going to take another step forward. Obviously, if she draws the rail and misses the break, she can get beat. But there's just not another horse in there that's giving me like the kind of warm and fuzzies of I can come up with a story as to why they're going to take a 20-point speed figure jump forward. I can see Tamara running 10 points.
All right, JK, we know you've got stuff to do. We're going to boot you out. We're going to continue this conversation with David. JK, we'll talk to you on probably the early week show next week, but we'll see you very soon. David, let's turn our attention. Actually, let's go back to Tamara for 1 second.
See you
Cheers,
later.
buddy. Go back to Tamara for 1 second, just in terms of, obviously when you're not making a line at this exact stage, but you do have a line associated in the early look at the race on DRF. What price are you calling Tamara on there right now? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I mean, the fields aren't set yet, so I'm being conservative with my lines right now. I have her currently at 7-5. I think when I use all the points in the race, and I do a final line when the race is drawn next week, or the pre-entries come out, I mean, she's going to be odds on in all likelihood. It's just given how the field shakes up and her just her perceived dominance of the division. So I think you have to decide how likely she really is to win the race. I mean, like JK was saying, you might not project that one of these horses is going to take a huge speed figure step forward, but you could also frame it a different way and say that, okay, I believe Tamara is 75% to win the race. But if she's 1 to 5, then 75% is not good enough. So you might want to find an alternative in that situation.
Makes me feel good to say you think she'll be odds on. That was part of my logic in continuing to bet those numbers that we were seeing. One of the other races on Future Stars Friday, obviously much harder without having the exact idea of who's coming over, etc., how they're going to acclimate. But do you have any other thoughts on these races where we're going to get some European participation?
Yeah, I mean, the turf races are always a little bit in flux until we find out exactly who is coming. I mean, we've heard some rumblings that Aidan O'Brien might send a few horses. Obviously, it would be very exciting if he sends that Group 1 winner from ARC Weekend, the filly, whose name is escaping me now. Opera Singer, yes. She'd obviously be kind of a similar situation to Meditate last year, a really tough horse to beat. Waiting for confirmation on that. The juvenile male turf race seems very wide open, not just among the Americans, waiting to hear who's coming over from Europe. The winners of the prep races have all earned sort of similarly mediocre speed figures, and also a lot of horses that are coming from off the pace to win these races. So it's going to be interesting to see how the pace shakes up, but also how that running style translates to a Santa Anita turf course that can sometimes be a little more speed favoring than a track like Keeneland with that longer stretch. So I'll be interested to see how all of that works. And then, the turf sprint, we've got this European horse, Big Evs, who's been talked about potentially coming over. He's looked really good to me, but 5 furlongs on the turf at Santa Anita, Euro has to be really fast to be successful in that situation.
I was going to ask how you are generally evaluating Euros having to do this super sharp flat 5. I certainly don't see it as a positive, but I'm also not going to necessarily be throwing them out of hand in the juvenile turf sprint or the sprint itself. How do you try to figure out which ones might be able to handle that unusual configuration for them?
Yeah, it's just really horse specific. I watch the replays from Europe to not just see how fast they're going in the early stages of those races, but really their gait speed. And one horse that really kind of sticks out that has been talked about quite a bit since he ran at Keeneland is Livin' the Dream, who's supposed to run in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint on Saturday. And one thing that you could really see watching his replays for that Woodford was that he just busts out of the gate a length or two ahead of the other horses sometimes. That's because in Europe, they generally break more slowly on average than over here. But there was the thought that maybe he did have the gate speed to compete against the American horses. And I think he proved in that race, despite finishing 4th or 5th, that he really does. And the turn back to 5 furlongs at Santa Anita might actually really benefit a horse like him. But he's sort of an atypical European contender in that he just naturally has that gate speed. They don't usually train for that overseas. So a lot of those runners can be somewhat up against it.
I'm interested in him a little. I know we're talking about Friday and we're now pivoting to Saturday briefly. I'm a little bit interested in him as one who might get forgotten and seen, couldn't hack it at Keeneland. But I think he hit on a couple of key points. The difference in the course, that half a furlong back. Current prices, probably not. About 6 to 1, I think, internationally. But that's a horse that could be double digits in the end, and one that I think is worth keeping an eye on. Going back to the juvenile turf sprint before we wrap up this part of the conversation, David, anybody in particular on the USA side that's caught your eye for that one so far?
I mean, George Weaver's got a strong hand. I'm really interested to see, as long as Crimson Advocate makes it to the gate, it sounds like they're still pointing for that race off the long layoff, how she does, because she was so impressive early in the year, not just winning at Royal Ascot, but if you go back and watch that race that she won at Gulfstream, I mean, she was just really took to the turf that day impressively. Sometimes that early season form doesn't translate to the end of the season, and her having been off for so long, there are a lot of questions surrounding her, but George Weaver's got some other good ones amidst waves, None Nets. Just it feels like there's a lot of speed signed on, but sometimes going the 5 furlong distance, that doesn't necessarily mean that you want to look for a closer, because those races typically don't totally fall apart the way they do at 5.5 or 6 furlongs. So you need to find the horse that can strike the right balance.
The speed of the speed. We talk about it so often. Well, David, thank you so much for your thoughts on Future Stars Friday. AJ, we can go to this race, this claimer at Keeneland. We won't preview it, but we'll watch along, and then we'll have another leaderboard to check out after, milling around a little bit back there, but looks like everybody's getting into line. I'm going to dip out for a minute while we watch this race at Keeneland. Let's send it to the call.
Junior's Gift coming forward, along with Washington's Union. Funny Uncle moves into line. Winnemac Avenue, the last one. First wire at the post. They're off. There goes Honed, and there goes Dance Some Mo. Dance Some Mo and Honed to go 1-2, joined by Winnemac Avenue, far outside, who travels third for the move down into the first turn. And then Gamer, who's back toward the inside, in fourth. Winston Wolf is in fifth. Washington's Union, a wide sixth. Junior's Gift back toward the inside is saving ground in seventh. Funny Uncle drops back one spot behind that one in eighth position. Glen Airy moves up from ninth on the outside. Then a gap of 5 more lengths back to Princely in 10th. And Bright Spark is last of the 11. The opening quarter, 23.79 seconds up the backstretch. Dance Some Mo leading Winnemac Avenue by 3/4 of a length. Gap of 2 lengths back to Gamer in third. Washington's Union, center of the track, is in fourth. Honed is fifth in between horses. Junior's Gift toward the inside is in sixth and running 6 lengths off the lead. Glen Airy seventh. Winston Wolf is in eighth. And then Funny Uncle ninth toward the inside is 8 lengths off the lead. Princely is next to last to the far turn, and Bright Spark is last. 48.51 seconds was the time for the first half mile. Dance Some Mo, Winnemac Avenue contesting the lead, stride for stride around the far turn. Washington's Union is third, wide again on the turn, a length off the front pair. Gamer is fourth down toward the inside as they make the move past the quarter pole and head for the top of the short stretch. Junior's Gift and Glen Airy, that pair 8 lengths for the lead. Winnemac Avenue comes away with the lead. It widens quickly to 5-6 lengths as they turn for home. Winnemac Avenue leads it by 6 as they move through the stretch. Then Dance Some Mo back toward the inside second. Junior's Gift is in third. Winnemac Avenue the leader. Into the final 16th, Winnemac Avenue and Tyler Gaffalione aboard Winnemac Avenue to win it. It was Junior's Gift home in the second position, followed by Dance Some Mo in third. Bright Spark came from last to be fourth.
Every point's going to end up mattering here in these contests we've got going for you. We won't be sticking on till the end, but we will stick around for the next race at Belmont at the Big A before we get out of here. Meanwhile, we've got a few more minutes to spend with David Aragona, and I have a very obvious question that you've surely been asked before on any other podcast, video cast where you have your background on there. What horses are we looking at? Who made your wall of fame back there on the mantle, my friend?
Oh, just a collection of things over time. We've got Funny Side, Arrogate, Rachel Alexandra. Just some favorites from over the years.
That's a pretty good. That's a pretty good crew. Is Funny Side for you one of the horses that really helped get you into things?
Yeah, I mean, I must have been like in late high school when he was running, and just a horse that I had a lot of affection for, starting as a New York bred, watching his early races, following him on the Derby trail. He was one of the first times I dipped into the Kentucky Derby future pool, and I got him in the first pool at 93-1, and obviously I was just thrilled when he won the Derby that year. So just a horse that was really fun to root for, and then being the kind of Derby winner that continued to run on for subsequent seasons, and then when he won that 2004 Jockey Club Gold Cup, coming from between horses, just one of my favorite races. So yeah, he's always been a favorite of mine.
I love that. That was a fun, underrated race. I remember it was one of the rare times Durkin, I don't think he did the full Funny Side not today call, but it was definitely like Funny Side toiling, as they're coming to turn, and then to kick in like that. Oh, it was such an exciting day at the races. Yes, the great New York bred gelding, and we just lost him actually. Funny Side. Yeah. But what a great that was such a great story and a lot of fun. Were you up in Saratoga that summer? Remember, the place was, we didn't get to see him run, but the place was Funny Side crazy.
Yeah, I remember there was a lot of buzz for that matchup between him and Empire Maker and the Travers that just never materialized. Neither one made it to the race, but yeah, I remember that very well.
Got a lot of people commenting. We'll give shout outs to Corey and Peter and Richard. Richard mentioning about Tyler Gaffleone and how well he's been riding. How much in your form, David? I mean, as a morning line maker, you must have to pay attention to jockeys quite a bit because people bet them so much. But how about in your own analysis of races? How much does who's in the irons change the way you look at things?
Yeah, I try to pay attention to riders in my handicapping that I feel like are adding value. Everybody knows Irad Ortiz is a great jockey and his horses take money because of that. I like to look for the jockeys that I think are on a similar level but don't get bet the same way, like in New York, like the Jose Lezcanos, or some other names you could throw out at different times of the year when Dylan Davis is riding really well, or just jockeys that fly under the radar a little bit more. Their mounts aren't taking money because of who's riding them, but you're going to get a good effort from the rider. So I like to look for those kinds of jockeys in my handicapping, but certainly making the morning line, I factor in connections because they do move the tote board.
Yeah, the Irad Ortiz tax, as it might be termed, I'm sure is something that factors into your the math that you have to do there. And I think it's good advice to horse players, whatever circuit it is that they're following, to pay attention to these things and pay attention to not just who's riding well and who maybe you're getting the quality without paying the tax for, but also just tendencies. You'll see riders who will always be aggressive and want to send. And whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing in a given race scenario, it's something that really pays to pay attention to. In terms of your own study at this point, David, and I'm sure it varies at different times of the year, and they look like they might be going a minute early here at Belmont at the Big A, so we're going to skip to that soon. But I was just curious how much of your balance is spent completely on New York, where you're so involved intimately to the racing around the country. How does that balance change throughout the year?
In the summertime, it's almost exclusively New York because Saratoga takes up, as you said, so much bandwidth in my brain that it's hard to pay attention to too much else. In the wintertime, I do follow other tracks, a little bit of Gulfstream, a little bit of Oaklawn. I'll take a look at Fairgrounds, especially for our podcast. We'll try to branch out because the winter racing goes through a little bit of a lull in New York. But definitely more towards the wintertime is when I try to follow some other circuits more.
Let's go to the feed here, AJ. I'm seeing 3 minutes on the screen, but the originally scheduled post time was closer than that. We'll see if they may end up slowing down here a little bit. But in any case, this feels like a race that's definitely worth chatting about. We've got a big favorite in the form of Francesco Clemente here. David, how do you evaluate this runner's chances second time in the country?
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what we get from this horse. I certainly don't want to bet him at 4 to 5. That seems like too low of a price to me. But there are obviously expectations around him because he was bet down to a very short price when he made his U.S. debut last time. Got off to a tardy start that day, was always kind of behind the 8 ball, was running on decently at the end of that race. And I suppose stretching out to 1 3/8 as he's doing here is supposed to be up his alley because he was easily handling 1 1/4 in Europe. So he's got that stamina. But it remains to be seen if he can build on that form and promise that we saw from him going back to 2022, because his starts this year, even in Europe, have been a bit of a mixed bag. And now he's been switched to Chad Brown, who's putting the blinkers on the second start for his barn. It's sort of an atypical move to make an equipment change this soon for Chad Brown. I assume that's a reaction to him breaking slowly last time. So I'll be interested to see what we get from this horse. I don't totally trust him. I was going towards the number 9 as my alternative, Swore, who's unfortunately taking a little more money than I was hoping he would. He's 2 to 1 right now. Just a horse that should have broken his maiden 2 back, got bumped in the late stages of that race, and was very impressive last time at Kentucky Downs, albeit against a weaker field, but just feels like a horse that wants every bit of this marathon distance, and I still think he's progressing as a lightly raced 4-year-old.
I could definitely see the case on Swore. Any others, perhaps something at a bigger price to mess around with in exotics, or do you think the top 2 in the market really have it between them?
I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense that Swore is such a shorter price than the number 1 Cyber Ninja. I was sort of deciding between the 2 of them, and Cyber Ninja is a horse that I've had a bit of an affinity for. I was impressed when he broke his maiden going 11 furlongs back in the springtime at Belmont Park, and they tried a tough spot in the Belmont Derby, and I thought he took a step in the right direction last time. He's a playable price at 9 to 2.
That's the one that I'm interested in. I think just looking at pace figures, likely to be positioned considerably ahead of those top two in the market, might just be able to trip out here at what is a decent price for Cyber Ninjas. They're almost all loaded up here now, AJ. So I think we should throw it out to the call. We'll come back. We'll let David go. We'll do some leaderboards and we'll get out of here. But let's go to the race at Belmont at the Big A.
And they're in the gate. And they're off. And that was a bit of an awkward start for number 4, Francesco Clemente, who trails the field. There is Royal Spirit, who is out first. And from the outside, Omni King is now moving up. Classic Creation is down at the rail. And in between horses is Hold the Salsa, who is now advancing. Then a break of 2 to Ghostly Prince down on the inside, running in 5th position. Swore is on the outside in 6th. It's another 3 to Fatima's Blessing. Francesco Clemente on the outside. And Cyber Ninja is the trailer in 9th as the field comes through the stretch for the first time. So it is Royal Spirit, Hold the Salsa on the outside, and Classic Creation is up close. And then it's Omni King, who's running in 4th. Ghostly Prince and the Blue Blinkers down at the rail and in 5th. The quarter 24 and 2. Swore is in 6th position. Followed next by Fatima's Blessing and Francesco Clemente. And the trailer is Cyber Ninja. And the half went in 49 and 3/5 seconds as they go around the clubhouse turn. Royal Spirit is the leader here by 2.5 lengths. Hold the Salsa, Classic Creation, they are right together, 2nd and 3rd. And then it is Omni King and Ghostly Prince. Those two races a team. Swore in 6th, followed by Fatima's Blessing down at the rail. Francesco Clemente on the outside. Cyber Ninja continues to trail. 3/4 in 1:16 and 1. As they continue up the backstretch, Royal Spirit maintaining the lead here. The lead's 1.5 lengths. Hold the Salsa, 2nd by a head. Classic Creation is down at the rail and in 3rd. Then comes Omni King and Ghostly Prince. And now they go into the far turn. And it's still Royal Spirit. Royal Spirit by 3.5 lengths. Classic Creation down on the inside is in 2nd, followed by Hold the Salsa. Omni King on the far outside. Ghostly Prince down at the rail. Francesco Clemente is out in the middle of the course. And then it is Swore. And they're all chasing Royal Spirit, who has built a 6-length lead. Francesco Clemente is coming on now, but now there's just a 16th to the finish. Here's Royal Spirit. Here's Francesco Clemente with a big surge on the outside. Francesco Clemente got there. Erod Ortiz Jr. timed it perfectly.
Definitely major contest implications, maybe in what didn't happen as opposed to what did. For a second there, I thought the bird had flown on Royal Spirit, but in the end, despite that awkward beginning, Erod times it perfectly on Francesco Clemente. And Cyber Ninja, I don't know why he was ridden so cold, but his race was long over. Did okay, I guess, to run into 2nd. Maybe one I'd give another chance going forward. Any thoughts, quick thoughts from you coming out of that race, David, as to what we just saw?
Yeah, Francesco Clemente, just the best horse. I mean, got away to the slow start again, but clearly the added distance was really able to allow him to find that stride. And I agree with you about Cyber Ninja. He got rolling just a little bit too late, was given too much to do, and a horse that I've given second chances to before, and I probably will have to again.
I think so. David, we're going to let you go. All that's left, the business left to do here is just having this thing go official. So I'll interact in the comments, but you've given us so much great time already. We'll make sure to plug everything you've got going on. I mean, so great for you to give us the whole hour during such a busy season. Really appreciate you, my friend, and we'll look forward to reading your work. drf.com, the place to go. And then you're also going to be part of this Breeders' Cup special advance edition as well. We'll catch you on the Pacecast too.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Cheers, David. All right. Great stuff from David, who we thank, and hopefully we'll get back on at some stage. I might just pull out that piece of us talking about the distaff for our Monster Pod segment. We'll be a 14th done with that before we've even started. That's always nice, and just one of the people I always love. I love his analytical approach that he brings, and just sort of a great combination of a fresh perspective and also, but very much rooted in the old school horse playing stuff. Terrific stuff from David, and JK was great as well. I feel bad I made fun of him about the chalk exacta that really wasn't, but he'll get over it. I make fun of him about a lot of stuff. Shout out to Adam in the comments, was impressed by Erad's timing there. Absolutely. Dayfon wanting to know about the pick 6 sequence for Saturday. Which one are you referring to? I mean, every track has one. Usually it's the last 6 races. Is there something that I'm missing? Is this a good question that I'm just not understanding the nuances of? Bashan has put up some ideas for us throughout the conversation. I mean, I don't saying something about not looking at figures for older horses in grade 1s. I don't know about that. I think they can be very telltale personally. Question about proxy for the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. We're going to have that answered much later as we go on. I don't want to get into too much of the nuts and bolts on too much of this stuff before we know exactly who's running and who's going where and all that fun stuff. But believe me, I'm not punting forever. I'm just punting for now. If you follow us, if you get involved with our, in addition to the Breeders' Cup Advanced Edition, we're going to have our In the Money podcast.com/plus coverage, which will get into all of that. We have a heat map about speed figures specifically that a lot of people enjoy. I'm seeing a rumor about Forte being retired. I haven't seen that. So I don't know. Would it shock me? No, it wouldn't shock me. I mean, this horse has clearly had, sort of famously some physical issues, etc. Along the way. So anyway, we'll see. I don't want to comment on stuff that's just rumor at this point, or rumor as far as I know. If somebody has a link to the article in the comments, I'll take a look at that. Oh, Breeders' Cup Saturday pick 6. Okay, it's going to be on the last 6 races. It's not going to end in the Classic. So it will be the last 6 races, but they haven't finalized exactly what those 6 races will be yet. That information coming probably in conjunction with the pre-entries around October 23rd. So stand by for that. But the Classic will not be the last race. There will be 2 races after that. Question about if Arcangelo is going to like Santa Anita. I would think so. I mean, he's a horse who's, he certainly took to the Saratoga and Belmont configurations equally well. We've got our final leaderboard for the show. There's one more race left at Keeneland. I wish I had the time to stick around and give you guys some bonus coverage. Sadly, I do not, but we will take a look at what's going on, starting off with the overall, where El Capitan, Mark Capitan, is in first place with that same score, 93-24. The somewhat chalky results since haven't heard him, and then very similar in behind with Tony Garofalo, Chris Olson, Kevin Kilroy, Chris Olson again, all in positions. Brian Chenvert will and Pat Gianforte will do the top 7 for there. That's all about the first spot. Looks like a bunch of people have different horses, right? So depending on what happens and what the prices are, could get a shake up there. But Mark Capitan has a pretty comfortable lead. He's got himself about a 5-to-1 shot. Is that about a 5-to-1 shot in front of the field? So you can do the math on the leader, do your own leaderboard math and see how secure that is, and watch this last race coming up, the nightcap at Keeneland, for much more. Hopefully we'll get tweeting the results, our overall winner and our final table list. Speaking of which, let's see how that final table is shaking out right now, AJ. If we go to that leaderboard, Brian Hofacker still there in first, Michael Cavana, Tanya Taylor, Silky Wilkie, Kevin Nunez, Michael Domowell, Pat Quagliero, Jonathan Cummings, Alexa Zepp, and Chris Littlemore. Actually, right now, Chris Littlemore and Daniel Edwards in the dead heat for that last spot. But on tiebreakers, Chris Littlemore would advance if that were to end right now. See a lot of different numbers there. I mean, it's still all to play for. Thanks to everybody who participated in Horseplayer Happy Hour Tour. With that in mind, I'll name check everybody on this list. AJ, Daniel Edwards, Mark Henderson, Robert Courtney, down to the 13th spot. If you can just scroll and give me the last 7. Mark Winland, Stephen McNatton, Julie LeBoyko, Daryl Parker, Julie LeBoyko again, Matt Miller, Howard Johnson. Now, folks there towards the bottom, they're going to need a price. That cut line pretty significant at $32.50. Things getting very competitive as we get to see who's going to be in our final table. We're going to interview as many of them as possible next week, along with Jeff Van Dree. Expanded coverage. I don't know if I'll go from We'll probably start at 4 and just go to the end. Probably do, weather permitting, we'll do Aqueduct and Keeneland again. We'll see how that goes. But that's all the time we have. I got to get out of here. I got more, people to see, places to go, something like that. AJ, thanks so much. Great work. And thanks for helping me with these pullouts. I'll reach out to you about that separately. Thanks to JK. Thanks to David. Thanks to everybody who took the time to comment, who played all year long in Horseplayer Happy Hour, from In the Money Media, from our friends at the Breeders' Cup, especially Haley and Justin. It's been such a pleasure to work with Dave Vader over at CPP, also an unheralded hero on this Horseplayer Happy Hour all year long. Play next week. One more qualifier to go. Horseplayers.com. 179. The house cut goes to charity. I don't think I even mentioned that at any point on this broadcast. That's how it's available. I got it in there before the end. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatale. May you win all your photos.